Welcome to the briefing of the Forsyth County Board of Commissioners. We have adopted a budget of $500 million with a B, billion dollars, plus a few cents, 88 cents, I guess. But it's been a very good meeting, and it seems to me that the commissioners have done the job that they were elected to do. And from a personal point of view, I'm proud to sit up here with folks who are responsible citizens, and we've got the same tax rate, no tax increase, and everything is just rolling right along. And having said that, most of what happens because of this fine staff we have in Forsyth County, and we're fortunate to have a good leader, Dudley Watts, who can continue from here on out.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate the kind words. We do have some items for consideration for the June 23rd, 2022 meeting. This is the last meeting of the fiscal year, and so what you're going to see, there are a lot of items on it related to financial matters, trying to close out year end and all that. As is our new policy, the items that are the planning items and the kind of the public hearing items, we're going to fully brief. Everything else, I'm just going to quickly go through, so we should be able to get through it fairly quickly. The first item on the agenda is a public hearing on a zoning petition of R.S. Parker Development, LLC. It's F-1608, and Chris Murphy is going to brief it.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Good evening, or good afternoon, I should say. Commissioners, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chair. This is a request of CM Family Limited Partnership, Cecil Hash and Margaret Armfeld to rezone 318.99 acres of property on the west side of Idols Road, south of Mallard Trail and south of the county's asset, Tanglewood Park. The request is special use rezoning from YR, Yadkin River Ag, and RS30 to YRS, RS15S, and RM5S. This is the subject property shown on the county's growth management area plan in Legacy, located in both GMAs 4 and 5, which are future growth and rural growth management areas respectively. This is the location map for F-1617, the subject property highlighted in yellow. Again, located south of Tanglewood and west of Idols Road. This is the subject property outlined in yellow, shown on the countywide aerial imagery. This is looking at the subject property from Idols Road. This is looking north along Idols Road. The subject property is to the left. This is looking at Tanglewood Golf Course from internal to the property. The subject property is in the foreground, and you see, I'm not sure if this is the championship course or the other course, but this is the part of the golf course at Tanglewood. This is the site plan for F-1617. This development proposes a mix of single-family homes and townhomes, 537 units over that approximately 319 acres. Most of the development is located within GMA 4, but there is a portion of the project that does go within that GMA 5 area, which is the YR portion of the property there along the Yadkin River. But still a substantial amount of open space along the river and a lot of interspersed open space throughout the development that will be both passive and active as far as recreational amenities. There'll be some passive parks, there'll be some gazebos, there will be a clubhouse with pool area, etc. This is just kind of zooming in a little bit closer to, this is on the northern end of the site. Idols Road is on the right-hand side of your image. On the western side of Idols Road is the main entrance into the project, and the townhome portion of the project is there on the north side of that entrance. And on the south side is where you transition to the single family as you go further into the site. As you're coming in that main road, where you have to make the decision to turn left or right, that's where one of the amenity centers is located, with a pool and clubhouse at that location. This is the middle area which kind of transitions into the single-family site. You see this is the clubhouse area, this was that townhome area, and then you come down this main spine road, and there are single-family homes on both sides of a portion of that project, and then you transition into sort of where the majority of the homes in this project are located. And the colors don't differentiate anything except for, I believe, the width of the lots that are proposed as part of their project. This is the southern section. This is the section that is closest to both Tanglewood proper and to the Yadkin River. There is a modified condition that has been approved by the developer and is in your packet under the signed conditions of approval. At this point, we did make a mistake when we sent it over, and it's not included in your special use permit, but we have actually already corrected that and gotten the revision to the clerk, and that will be included in the permit that you actually adopt. But this language has already been agreed to by the developer, and it's signed in your packet. And this really deals with what the recommendations that came out of the traffic impact analysis that is part of your project, that's in your project documents in your packet. This just specifies specifically what those improvements are, and we want to make sure we had that as a specified condition of approval, since traffic concerns will be one of the things that you will hear from opposition should they choose to come to your meeting in a couple weeks. In summary, on the project, this does have access to public sewer. With that, Legacy recommends that the growth management area 4 areas, which were identified as future growth areas in Legacy, be treated as GMA 3 areas, because you now have public sewer available to them, and therefore they should be eligible to be developed at densities of up to 8 units per acre. This request will increase the variety of housing types in the area, which is a stated goal of Legacy. There are single-family homes and townhomes proposed as part of this development. A large percentage of the site is left undisturbed and will be considered as undeveloped open space. And as I also mentioned, there are some developed areas of recreation included in the project. This was heard by the Planning Board at their May 12th, 2022 public hearing. There were several speakers that spoke in opposition. The concerns centered around incompatible density, traffic concerns, a few stormwater concerns, and then again, traffic, and primarily the cut-through traffic and congestion that could be possible on Middlebrook Drive as a result of this project. Planning Board did vote 6-3 to recommend approval of this request to the commissioners. The site plan does meet UDO requirements. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions. Also in attendance today is Jeffrey Fansler, who is the Deputy Director of Winston-Salem DOT, but Winston-Salem DOT serves as the staff for the overall Metropolitan Planning Organization. They review the traffic impact analysis not only for projects within the city, but those that lie in the county's jurisdiction that are within the MPO. So Jeff Fansler can answer any specific questions about traffic if there are any. I'm not a traffic expert. So with that, I'll turn it over if there are any questions.
Okay, comments or questions? This is a pretty nice development.
Well, I have a couple for Chris, and then I would like to hear from the traffic person also, just his overview of it, not anything specifics. The number of trips estimated, you know what that is.
I want to say roughly off the top of my head, 4,300, roughly 4,400 trips per day, maybe 45. But
okay. The go back to one of your slides that shows the whole. Yes, we're not. I guess good enough. The 318, is it just down to the ag line where it meets, I'd call it the floodplain area? Is 318 in the ag up, or does the 318 include the, I know it can't be built in, but does the 318 include the floodplain area?
Commissioner Linville, it does. The 318 acres is inclusive of all the property, all the way down to the bank of the river.
Well, I don't recall. None of what's in the floodway area, the fact it cannot be anything built in it, then there's no conversion of, it's the ag and the other is where the conversion is. Of the, what could be built currently and then by the PRD making small lots.
Essentially, if you have a piece of property and you're doing a straight subdivision under existing zoning, you have a number that you could do, but you have limitations on what you can do based on the floodplain. Because, again, if you have a property and it has encumbrances on it that you can't develop in, you might be able to do, let's just say, use round numbers, 100 lots. But if you've got area within a floodplain and you're doing a straight subdivision, you would never be able to yield 100 lots because you can't develop in the floodplain. The planned residential development component and tool that's in the ordinance is a tool that's meant to encourage cluster development by staying out of those areas. You allow the overall density that could be realized by staying out of those areas. It's a trade-off. We're going to have open space and preservation of that border, preservation of that area between the area of development and the river. So the planned residential development does not make you lose that yield. So under this case, if they were developed as do the zoning, do the rezoning, do the acreages as they've proposed, but not do it as a PRD, they could never get 537 units or 537 lots because they couldn't develop into the floodplain. But by doing it as a planned residential development, clustering those lots, it allows you to do your full yield. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but what they're doing is allowed by the ordinance. You don't take the land you can't use out of the equation. You're allowed to use that as part of your density calculation.
Where would the proposed sewer hookup be?
There is and again, this gets back to the kind of discussion we had over the last 2 or 3 months with the other projects. This is a private lift station at this point, which will then pump over to the Idols Road lift station that the commissioners worked with City County Utilities and Davie County to build. It's my understanding that, to answer your question, the location of the lift station is, hopefully you can see my mouse, it's in this area here. And it will pump over across Idols Road to the Idols Road lift station, which is already a City County Utilities lift station. It's my understanding that there have already been some preliminary discussions between the Utility Commission staff and the developer. The Tanglewood lift station that's already part of City County Utilities, there are some concerns about that lift station. It's an older lift station. I believe City County Utilities is interested in partnering with the developer and actually constructing the lift station that they're talking about as a City County Utility lift station. So it hopefully will be a public lift station, but as proposed currently, it's a private lift station that will pump to the public lift station, similar to the discussions we've had over the last 2 or 3 months.
Yeah, and I just want to, and probably defer to Gordon a little bit, but everything that Chris just said, because obviously the county owns Tanglewood and the Idols Road lift, and the property where the lift station is, will come back to you. So,
Well, with whatever discussion is going on there, and knowing that we have financial interest in that, then does that, the okay for the actual hookup, does that need to be worked out before this zoning is decided upon?
Yeah, I think from a practical perspective, absolutely. Prior to this coming to the board, the Utility Commission was already preparing a couple of options for the Tanglewood lift station and some improvements that they wanted to make. I had concerns just from staff perspective about how that would impact Tanglewood Park, communicated those to the Utility Commission. They were looking at lots of options. Now that this appears to be a reality, what I heard from Courtney was we're going to rethink all of that. And so I think that's a long answer to a short question, but yes, you'll have to be a partner in all that. Gordon, you want to?
And I'd have to look at the maps, and I don't think we've had the discussion with Utility Commission about this. If I remember correctly, which I may be not remembering correctly, the Idle Road lift station was meant to serve different property. It was especially meant to serve the Tanglewood Business Park, but then other properties surrounding Clemens, and it may be perfectly fine for this, but I just don't know where those conversations are at this point.
Well, when the zoning comes to us, and particularly in this case, and well, those others, they just got along, and those questions started coming up about the sewer. But when we got to get a zoning, it comes to us, are we required by any law to act on it in a certain length of time, or if there's something like this that is into play? Since this is going on, I'm just about the sewer situation, whether you would, the county would need to make or have to make a decision on a zoning matter like, well, particularly this one, before those things are talked through.
You don't have to vote on this on the 23rd. It could be done at a different date. At some point, you will have to rule on this, but it certainly does not have to be in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I'm not sure that I don't think the approval of the utilities structure and the approval of the subdivision, that they are two separate things.
I was going to say, I mean, again, you kind of have a due process. I mean, someone has submitted an application, it's come before you. I believe that you can, have reasonable discussion about it, but I believe this project can stand without it having to be a city, county, utility lift station similar to the ones we heard before. But I believe you can certainly have further discussions related to it. But eventually, I believe, as the county attorney was alluding to, you would have to take action on it to afford the petitioner their due process, since they have something before you. But again, I don't think it would have to be this, the meeting coming up on the 23rd, or, even the first meeting in July, similar to some of those cases that we finally put to rest several weeks ago. I think we first heard 2 or 3 months ago. So,
Well, if action was taken, let's just for discussion's sake, just for discussion, if it were approved, then that don't automatically mean that this development could be hooked up into that system, does it?
That is, I think that's correct. And so if you approve the subdivision and they can't ever work out adequate sewer, then they can't build. So they would have to come back and readjust zoning or
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, city county utilities has to accept the flow. I'm not sure what their policy is on how they go about accepting it. But it gets back to some of those discussions we've had over the last 2 or 3 months. I would say that, if this project were approved and the Utilities Commission is interested in partnering with the developer to relocate the Tanglewood lift station, I believe that the developer would certainly be interested in that because it's going to help their overall cost, because the Utilities Commission would be putting some money into it because it's going to help the Utility Commission and it's going to serve that overall basin. So, if this were approved, yes, the Utility Commission would have to agree to take the flow, and as part of that, I believe their discussions would be the negotiations with the developer and the county commissioners on how the Tanglewood lift station could be relocated and reimagined that would serve both Tanglewood and this development.
Yeah, they would have to take the flow if their system can accept it. So, clearly they can't accept the flow if their system won't accept it.
I'd like to hear from just an overview of what the traffic person says. Everybody would probably like to hear that.
I'm still here if there are any other questions, but Jeff Fansel.
Yes. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Jeff Answer with Winston-Salem DOT. I need to be closer to this.
Say I'm a little bit taller, so stick with me.
Can you hear me okay? Good afternoon. Just real briefly, I'll give you an overview. I think Chris hit it on the head. This site is expected to generate about 4,600 trips a day. Understand those are two-directional trips, not just 4,000 cars one day, flooding one. But that's 24 hours distributed over a 24-hour day. A couple of highlights I wanted to make. Obviously, the challenges are access via Middlebrook, its connections to, of course, Louisville Clemens Road, Cross 158. So really that's channeling a lot of the majority of the traffic into Idols Road at that T intersection. So there are some challenges at that intersection that was noted in the traffic analysis. And just for discussion purposes, so you're aware of the concern that we noted and that we've tried to work with a developer on is at the intersections, particularly of Middlebrook and Idols. That intersection is expected to have some challenges, obviously, because today it's just a two-lane approach, one in each direction on Middlebrook. So what we did do, we identified that problem with the proposed site and what the traffic would generate. So we did work with them, and we were recommending, of course, this is out of our jurisdiction of requirement, but NCDOT does require it. And so the developer has committed to installing 2 southbound lanes, which will dramatically improve the efficiency, largely because you can turn right a lot better than you can turn left. And so when we separate the right and left turns, you're going to see the efficiency of the intersection of Middlebrook and Idols Road increase a lot. Now, still going to have a significant delay in the PM. This was a PM, particularly an evening problem with folks returning to this many units of housing units, so getting off of work, headed back home. So the analysis was clear that the bigger problem would be in the evening, but understand that the improvements there are going to help, but there'll still be significant delays. I think worst case we modeled was about a 1.5 or 2 minute delay, worst case. Now there are a lot of factors that go in. That's probably not an everyday thing, but there will be some delay experienced at that intersection. Real briefly, there was a couple other improvements that we're recommending in regarding turn lanes into the site to help get folks out of the travel lanes of Idols Road. They are recommending that, and we'll be providing that into the main access on the site. And one other comment I will make is the way that we were presented this indicates that basically a 4-phase build out, and traffic will, what we call normalize and find its patterns. It's leaving, and so traffic normalizes. There's this initial reaction, and then it normalizes based on when folks may leave 5 minutes earlier, they may come 5 minutes later, but they do adjust. So we always model worst case to give you what could happen. We do expect it not to be that way every day. So understand that, and this TIA and what we were told to review puts this build window out to 2030. And so they're going to have to be a continual effort as this site develops through the next several years with North Carolina Department of Transportation and a continual monitoring of traffic as it builds to see if there's any other developmental issues we need to address. Because right now it's just a forecast, but it is forecasted to cause a little bit of issue there at Middlebrook to be in the primary area of concern. So I'm happy to answer any questions. The TIA was pretty in detail, but for this purpose of this meeting, I'm here if you have any questions, and I'm happy to provide answers if I can. So thank you.
Questions or comments?
Do you know when they project the build-out to be?
Yes, yes, ma'am. So when you said, I'm sorry?
When will it be complete?
When? So we were told, the analysis was 2030. 2030. That was our analysis. Now, I can't speak for how fast they build the homes, but our projection was 2030, and I'm not sure if planning has heard otherwise, but that was what we've been told.
And I really don't understand how they do this, but what we were told, we met individually, is that it's going to be laid out as though it were kind of a retirement community, 55 and over, which I don't think 55 is old myself. But if that were true, that would help the traffic, wouldn't it? Because those folks would not be going to work, probably.
Absolutely. Historical data indicates that a retirement community use, and we'll just use that vaguely, they typically generate less trips than someone of a more working age, and school children. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Additional comments? Okay.
I just want to ask Chris another
Thank you.
question. Chris, where it borders Tanglewood, what kind of protection does Tanglewood have? What have you called for? The golf course.
40-foot brick wall. Unfortunately, no. There are, whenever the whenever the force main that's coming from Clemens was constructed, there is, I believe, roughly from this area where my mouse is over to here. The force main line is laid, let's say you have a 30-foot easement. That 30-foot easement is from the Tanglewood property into the subject site, which with a force main and the way city-county utilities are with their easements, they don't want anything planted within that easement. So they don't have any plantings shown currently because they can't plant within the easement. It's my understanding that they've proposed a fence, but I'm not sure I'm not sure what type of fence it is. So, I'll have to do a little more research on that, but they'll definitely have to do alternative compliance through there because they can't plant the requisite buffer yard that is required because of the location of that force main. Now, again, that force main was installed, is already there, and it's not part of this development per se, but because they're bringing this development in, it therefore requires them to install a buffer yard. So we'll have to work with them on that. And that's something that the commissioners, if you're interested, obviously, Tanglewood being such a vital asset to the county and the county residents overall, I think, that's something in particular that the commissioners should probably pay attention to as far as ensuring that this project doesn't have access onto the golf course, and also, that there's a visual buffer there.
Oh, you can rest assured we'll do that.
But I'll be glad. I will not be here next week. I will be in Kentucky, but I will pass along. I will have Kirk Erickson, who is the deputy director officially as of Monday, will be here in my absence, and I will make sure he provides some additional information related to that.
Additional comments or questions?
I have a question of Dudley,
Sure.
I guess. Is it possible to get some amount of property tax this would impact? Is it possible to get a value on what that would be?
Sure, it'll be loaded with some assumptions, but yeah, we can certainly do that.
Okay, thanks.
When we were talking about the event center, which eventually ended up over in Tobaccoville, some of the, some of the comments from some of the residents, particularly in Clemens West, were concerned about increased traffic at Tanglewood. Now, we just heard, 4,500 coming and going every day. Is that basically what we would have had, do you think, with an event center at Tanglewood, with that type of thing, with this on Idle Road?
I'm not sure. It's obviously in a different location. That would have been more centered along Clemens Road, 158, and into Tanglewood itself. Obviously, this is on the backside, south side of Tanglewood. I don't know. There would have to be, I would have to know what the size of the building would be, how many events that there would be. I mean, it could be comparable, but I would hate to hazard a guess.
Okay, thanks. Additional questions or comments? You answered the questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Let me ask one thing. The gentleman from DOT, do you plan to be here the night that we vote on this? Okay, thanks.
All right, very good. All right, the second item we're going to review this afternoon is a public hearing to consider the submission of an application to the North Carolina Department of Commerce Rural Economic Development Division to apply for and accept, if awarded, a rural building reuse grant to support the expansion of CathTech LLC's medical device development and manufacturing facility in Forsyth County. Kyle Haney is going to review it.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
It's doing something now.
Yeah,
There you go.
And I apologize, this should be CathTech LLC, not Inc., but this is a project that came to us, and it's a little bit different than the normal economic development project because there are no local county incentives involved. This is really, this company is looking at expanding, and the state is offering some incentives, but it has to go through the local government. So I'll tell you a little bit about the project. CathTech LLC is a medical device developer, a local medical device manufacturer. They produce a number of different medical products that are used in surgeries. They were founded in 2000 and currently employ 57 employees, part-time and full-time combined. They have received a new contract and are looking at expanding their current facility, as well as purchasing a vacant facility and renovating that for their expansion as well. And that facility is on Meyer Lee Drive. The estimated capital investment is a little bit north of $1.9 million, and this project is estimated to create 60 new jobs. The average wage for those would be about $57,000. So like I said, the state is proposing to support this project through a North Carolina Building Reuse Grant, which in the amount of $300,000. The applicant must be a local government, so the county would be the applicant, and then we would pass through those dollars to the company. These are structured as a forgivable loan, and so this is forgiven over time as those jobs are created and verified. We've done a number of these previously with other projects. And then the local government is ultimately responsible for repayment if the terms are not met, if the jobs are not created. However, we will execute a legally binding commitment and promissory note with the company where we would go to them to get those funds for reimbursement. And so this item is to allow us to apply for those funds on behalf of CathTech LLC. Happy to answer any questions.
Comments, questions?
Are they competitive with Cook Medical?
I don't believe so. I'll check on that and get back to you, but I don't believe so. I think they're in a different market.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
There you go. Agenda item 3 is resolution adopting a revised remote participation policy for meetings of the Forsyth County Board of Commissioners and boards appointed by the Board of Commissioners, and Gordon Watkins, our county attorney, will review.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I hope you all have this document, which the clerk distributed to you. As I spoke about a couple weeks ago, we are getting ready for the eventuality when the governor will end the state of emergency, the statewide declared state of emergency. We don't know when that will be, but part of the state of emergency is the remote meeting authority, which was granted in the statute 166A-19.24, which we're currently under. When that expires, we will need authority for our county-appointed boards to continue to meet remotely. As you all know, you were in the forefront of remote participation. We adopted our policy back in 2016. It's been amended a couple times, specifically in 2020 to deal with the pandemic, but it allows you all, as we've done today, when a commissioner or two cannot be here, to participate remotely. So the first part, Section A of this proposed amended policy, would be virtually the same as what we've been operating under since 2016. The one change from the latest version is in Section A1, where I've simplified that a little bit. There used to be a category for employment, and then there was a category about county-related activities. And so I've just kind of combined those into C there, which says you could be excused from being here in person if you had to participate in other scheduled activities that make it impracticable to attend the board meeting. So I think that's a little bit easier language to follow. And so that's just a simplification there. The rest of A really is what we've been operating under. And it does specifically say that, unless we have a state of emergency for quasi-judicial hearings, which we don't typically hear here, or closed sessions, that everyone would need to be here for that. Moving on, subsection B, that's the new part here. That allows county-appointed boards, such as the Health and Human Services Board, to meet remotely if they'd like to do so. I understand that that's been very productive for the HHS board, and they would like to continue to do that. And so the way I've structured it is, boards change each year. You might have a new chairman, new members. And so at the first meeting, in section B1, it says, in the first meeting of the fiscal year, the board would get together and would decide how they wanted to meet for the coming year. If they want to meet completely remotely, if they want a hybrid meeting where there will be an in-person meeting, but other folks may be remote, or if they just want to be in person. So that you would allow your county-appointed boards to do that, and they would decide that each year. And so then really that just kind of follows through, the rest of this follows through very similarly to the way this board meets, with the exception that if there's a public hearing or a quasi-judicial hearing, that anyone with standing would need to agree that would be remote, because that's where you have participation by the public and you have evidence, particularly in quasi-judicial hearings. So those really need to be live if possible. And finally, B9 would say that the Board of Adjustment would continue to meet in person. That has a lot of public participation, and they do quasi-judicial hearings every meeting. And so that really does need to be in person. And finally, C just says that we're still under, as long as we have a state of emergency, we're still under the state rules. We can't change that. But eventually, if the state of emergency does end, then that would go away. So those are just my suggestions. I'm certainly open to any comments anybody has. And if you have any thoughts over the next couple of weeks, please let me know, and I'm happy to make any changes.
I have a question.
Yes,
Back
sir.
in the day when the commissioners appointed a 21-member board for the Tanglewood Park, not everybody could make the meetings, and that caused a problem. So the question in my mind is, let's assume that you had 21 people on a board, whatever we're talking about now, and 10 of them didn't have an iPad. Who pays for the iPad? We pay for it, the state pay for it, Tanglewood pay for it, or you just don't put them on the board.
Well, I think the amazing thing today is almost everyone has a cell phone. And so you can participate by cell phone, as we've seen, I believe, a couple of the commissioners did today. So I don't believe we would have to purchase iPads for everyone. But I will say that, we found that it is easier for a lot of people who work, people who have responsibilities to attend meetings remotely. They can stay at home, they can stay at their job and participate remotely. So I think that does open up these commissions and committees to better participation if that's what the committee wants to do.
Additional questions or comments?
I do, Chairman, have a question relative to, it was 1-5. So I know that the importance of allowing individuals to know, like, personal situations that may transpire, for example, personal illness. However, keeping with the healthcare confidentiality, why does that have to be discussed in an open meeting about somebody's personal disability or illness?
I think the intention there is to make sure that it's for a valid reason. We certainly do not want any specific information.
Yeah, I still have a tad bit a problem with it, because if it's a personal, if you need an excuse, let's do that. I worked in HR. If you need an excuse, we could submit that to the board chairman so that he can have actual notation of that versus me sharing a personal reason while I'm out, as far as the illness is concerned. Or is that just some language that we have to have?
It's
Additional
not
comment?
language you have to have, but we need to have a way to ensure that,
Could we possibly add, instead of denoting verbally to the whole county while you're out, could we just have a medical excuse to be attached if it's regarding an illness?
I don't think I'm quite understanding how that would be better, to attach a medical excuse rather than just saying I'm sick.
No, I'm saying to send it, to have your provider submit it to the chairman or this board versus me saying over the phone, I'm out because I'm sick.
I think you could just period it themselves.
That's fine. If that's the board's wishes, we could certainly do as Commissioner Kaplan stated,
And I'm only saying that because, you know, my personal history or health history is confidential. It's my business. And if I'm unavailable, I mean, most of us should be here by telling the truth. And if you need some backup information, I don't mind providing that. But what it ignites, so I just wanted to just give you a landscape of what that looks like. It initiates calls. It's calls from the journal because they want to know what's wrong with you. I mean, so it just is a vicious, ugly cycle for someone like me. So I'm just speaking for myself. I just don't want to
no,
participate.
I understand what you're saying, and it's certainly not my intention. And this is language that has been in the policy for 6 years, but I understand fully what you're saying, and we could certainly take out that last phrase as you and Commissioner Kaplan have suggested.
Okay, thank you. That's all. I appreciate you listening.
Sure.
Additional comments? Questions? Okay.
Thank you.
All righty. So, in conjunction with our current policy, we're not going to dive into a lot of detail on what's left on the agenda, but I did just want to briefly and let you know what you're going to hear in much more detail next Thursday. You've got a number, as I'd mentioned, a number of budget and finance matters. Actually, items 5 through 18. I think there's 14 budget and finance matters really needed to try to help deal with year end and just that sort of thing. So we'll review those next Thursday. We got one item related to ARPA funding, which is the execution of an agreement with the YMCA from Northwest North Carolina. That's that Reach Center project. That's a capital project, and so consider that. We do have a number of contracts for consideration. Some of those are to close out this year, but also to kind of set ourselves up for the next fiscal year. And so items 20 through 32 are contract matters, and then one property matter related to a lease agreement between Forsyth County and Piedmont Propulsion Systems at Smith Reynolds Airport. And then there are a number of appointments. Have they closed, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Manager, they close on Monday at 5 p.m.
Monday at 5 p.m. So a little extra push to try to get folks to apply for those that we need applications for. And then one report, we may end up adding something else before we're done. And hopefully, and I really appreciate, I know all the staff worked hard to try to get these on the agenda because it is the last meeting of the fiscal year. And so I appreciate that. And hopefully that will be pretty much it, and we won't have to walk anything in. Other than that, Mr. Chairman, we are done.
This meeting then is the last meeting we'll have until a week from today. When is Assembly Day?
Assembly Day.
Mr. Chairman, Assembly Day is on Tuesday. We
This
are going to leave the Government Center at 6:30 a.m.
Run that by, I think I heard you say 6:30 a.m.?
6:30 a.m.
Oh, all right, now, let me go back here. I said that this is the last time we'll meet until next Thursday. Are we all prepared to get up a little early and hop in a van with the clerk to the commissioners at 6:30 in the morning? Will be breakfast on the van on the way to Raleigh.
We'll stop at Hardee's.
So our next meeting, per se, will be on the road at 6:30. On Tuesday. And then 48 hours later, we will be in this room discussing the problems, needs, and interests of Forsyth County.
You did it.
Okay, well, now we all know what we have ahead of us. Anything further that you'd like to say? Oh, yes. Well, Commissioner Kaplan has moved that we adjourn. Do I hear a second? Second. Second by Commissioner Tanya McDaniel. We are adjourned.
Ready to go.